Hello and welcome to our Zoobean Experts on Air session. Today we are here with Jennifer Emmett from National Geographic Kids. We're very, very excited to have Jennifer with us today to talk about getting outside, getting our kids outside, despite the fact that today where I am it's super, super hot, so maybe we'll talk about that a little too. And we are just thrilled to have you here from National Geographic. And again, I'm Jordan from Zoobean, Zoobean's chief mom. And so let's get started talking about getting outside. I have the National Geographic Get Outside Guide with me that we love and use. Shocker. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at National Geographic Kids.
Sure. Well, it's great to be with you today, Jordan. I'm the Vice President and Editorial Director of Kids Books at National Geographic, and we make about 90 books a year for kids. Most of them have this great yellow border, so they really pop off the shelves, and we're always trying to capture for kids that sense of fun that helps them learn about their world.
Yeah, and how did you end up in the job? How did you end up where you are today?
So I started at National Geographic actually right out of college, and I was doing research for the kids television program Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And National Geographic had a research partnership with them. So I worked on that and learned a tremendous amount about geography, most of which I've probably forgotten. I did that show for 3 seasons and went to graduate school, got really interested in children's books by interning at Little Brown. And when I graduated from grad school, there was a position open at National Geographic in the kids book division, just launching into the trade, so books that are sold in bookstores. Previously, they had just been sold to the membership. So it was a very exciting time to start, and I've been at National Geographic ever since.
That's terrific. I love hearing people's stories, especially with kids' books. I think there's always, no matter what you're doing with kids' books, you tend to have like some very special relationship to them. And I think, speaking of one of those books, so we were talking about the Get Outside Guide. And this book it's such a wonderful book. It's, for kids, but also for parents. Obviously, it's really helpful for folks like me. I like the introduction was written by Richard Louv, right? I don't know if it's considered a full forward or an introduction, but anyhow, he writes about it. And he's sort of coined that phrase, a nature deficit, right? So kids have this nature deficit. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and if that sort of helped inspire creating this book and maybe some of the other, activities and things that you've been promoting?
Sure. Well, we were really thrilled to work with Richard Louv on this book because he is just the one person who's had this call to action to kids and parents all across the country saying, we need to get our kids to spend more time outside. And this term that he coined, the nature deficit disorder, gets at the idea of kids are spending too much time in front of screens and not enough time outdoors. And he harkens back to his childhood, and I think that, many of us can relate, where you would just go outside in the morning and you'd come home when you got hungry or something, or, when your mom sort of yelled out the back door, all right, get in here. So kids are spending less free time outside, and the time that they are outside is also more structured, so more in soccer or summer camp programs or things like that. So he really thinks that it's very important for kids' development to make a connection with nature and to have this unstructured time to play and to imagine and to develop in a healthy and kind of beautiful way. So he has done a tremendous amount of research and kind of collecting of research to pull this all together, and he goes around the country speaking to people. He came to National Geographic and spoke to us outside in our courtyard and really inspired our staff who was working on the book and sort of set the scene for us so that we would understand how important these issues are, sort of, for talking to parents. But the book really talks to kids. So we knew that kids would care less about, you know, is it good for me or all of that. We really want to know, is it fun? So that's what we did when we wrote the book, was we made sure that everything we put in there was inspirational and exciting and great ideas that spoke directly to kids and made it seem just very natural and fun for them to be outside.
Yeah, and did you see this? You have kids of your own who are sort of, they're, let's see, you said when they're 7, 8, and 11. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So did you experience that with your own kids when he spoke to you? Did it resonate with you, even as somebody working at National Geographic, which is all about the outdoors and sort of exploration? I mean, did you have that experience personally? It seems like you're really personally passionate about the topic.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's very hard to fight against having your kids be sort of over-programmed, and you want them to be taking the music lessons, and you want them to be doing the sports, and you want them to be doing photography, or, you know, whatever their passions are, and that's so important. I'm not suggesting that that not happen, but, you know, maybe it's not 5 commitments a week, maybe it's 3, and then there are some days where there's a little less structure and they can get outside of the routine and they can spend some time outdoors and really work on things like imagination and connecting to nature and, you know, all those beautiful, wonderful things that are so important to a really special childhood. And when I think about, you know, what I've done with my kids, I mean, I do encourage them to get outdoors, and I encourage our family to get outdoors. So we like to go for hikes on the weekend, or we just had a beautiful canoe trip down the Shenandoah River for Father's Day. I feel like, you know, these are moments where our family comes closer together because we're away from the busyness, and it gives us a chance to connect to one another and connect to nature and see the things that are important, and that has meant a lot. So I definitely practice what I preach on this one.
What are some of the things that you notice? You said you notice your family sort of bonding more when you're out. I think that's absolutely true. Are there other things that you notice in your kids, or that Richard also speaks to, maybe, that are some of the benefits of just having more unstructured time outdoors?
Yeah, well, one of the ones that's very interesting is just, and for all of us, but, you know, more time outside, and especially in a peaceful environment, can lead to less stress. And I think that because we're all so connected these days, and there's such an information overload, it's really wonderful to live in this world where we have the opportunity to access this information and this incredible communication, you know, 24/7. But sometimes it's not a bad idea to just take a break from it and get away and have some time in nature. Obviously, at National Geographic, we're very pro-digital, but you know, we think that it's important to balance that with nature. So I would say that particularly I've noticed the benefits with my 11-year-old daughter. When we go for a hike together, she's a very she's a classic introvert. She's kind of a shy child. She is incredibly observant, though, so she's always taking it in, but sometimes she's not, you know, sharing as much as I would like. When we're outside spending time together in nature, I notice that sometimes she'll open up, or she'll share those stories that you know, I'm always hoping will come out at the dinner table, but, you know, just get a little bit pushed aside by her more talkative younger siblings. So that is a beautiful thing, is to have that connection happen.
Yeah, that sounds like it. And I think most people, when we sort of think about our own experiences, whether or not you're thinking about it with so much intention, if you stop and, like, you know, reevaluate what you were doing, like last time you were just out without a plan, so to speak, you know, you do notice those changes. Even in really little kids, I have much younger kids. I think I certainly notice it. So I'm a fan. So let's.
That. I mean, we used to walk to our neighborhood preschool, and there's something so amazing about walking, in the same outdoor space, day in and day out, and seeing the changing of the seasons in a familiar area. And you can learn so much, and at that young age, the kids are very observant and really are excited to see, the worms
it's like
out of the ground after the rain or the change. It's nice.
Yeah, and I think I always noticed, like, as soon as we had kids, I thought people always talk about how the journey is so much more important than the destination, but it's not until you have kids again that you start seeing what that really means in the very, very, like, small microcosms, right, of just literally walking to school, right? You can have that experience.
So much fun.
So speaking of like you're walking to school, you live in the city, I'm assuming. Do you live in the city? You live in DC? Or in a more...
Yeah, it's a sort of I have
you don't have to give us your details. If you're walking to school. So a lot, especially in the summer, I think when we think about getting outside, we think a lot about, getting outside of like an urban area. So what about folks who do live in the city? What are some of the suggestions in the book, or that you've taken or otherwise, for getting outside, despite the fact that outside might not always mean nature outside your doorstep?
Right. Well, it was really important to us when we did this book that we talk about nature that's close and accessible and all around us. So we didn't want it to be always that you feel like you need to go on some, national park vacation. I mean, let's hope we all get to do that, right? But the idea of getting outside is really getting outside in your backyard, getting outside in your urban park, going out even on a balcony and looking up at the sky. There's so many benefits that can happen just in these nature moments that don't need to be about huge mountains or waterfalls. It can happen in much closer and important, quieter ways. So we have divided the book in different categories, and some of it is sort of thinking roughly about ecosystem. So we talk about water, getting wet, and so there we have some ideas for activities at the beach. We have an identification spread on identifying seashells. We talk about what happens to water in all different seasons, rivers and streams, looking at tide pool animals. One of my favorite activities that we have in this book, because it's a very cool blend of information, kind of hands-on identification, fun facts, and then suggestions for activities. So one of the things we suggest, and this is a perfect hot weather activity, is that you can make an underwater scope. And you do this with a coffee can, some plastic wrap, and a rubber band, and you hold it under the water, and then you can see some of the life that's happening, along the riverbed or the creek bed, and it just helps focus your gaze and your observation in this way that makes you realize there are these whole worlds to explore, often in just these sort of smaller, sometimes overlooked areas. So
that one.
A whole nother section on parks and nature that you can find at the park. So we really were careful to make the book accessible to all, sort of no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I also like how the book is, well, I guess I can say one of the things, like during the summer, everybody has their concerns for the summer, right? One is like you need to get outside more and make sure everybody's not inside playing video games like 90% of the day. And a lot of other people a lot of us think about, I'm sure yourself included, the summer slide, right? Kids losing learning that they've gained in the past year. And so what are the ways in which, you've sort of maybe some examples from the book, or just your own experience that you're able to sort of integrate being outside and learning and sort of like building literacy, other skills, despite the fact that you might be doing that in a non-traditional method?
Well, absolutely, and we want to capture that idea of boredom busting with the also at National Geographic Kids, we're all about the fun learning, always.
Yeah.
foundation, no matter what it is. So in all the activities, we are thinking about ways that you can be, using your brain, and some of it is more like, say, the art part of the brain. So if you're going to do some rock art, for example, you have that creative activity that's happening through the rock art, but then we're also helping you make connections. So you can think about how 8,000 years ago in the Sahara, humans carved full-size images of giraffes into rocks. And then you're making a connection between the activity that you're doing and then, this really rich glimpse into history. And then we talk a little bit about other cave paintings. So we're trying to make lots of connections through the book, learning connections, but all through this filter of challenging the kids to come up with their own exciting connections to nature, so that they're really experiencing it themselves and not just kind of taking it in through the page.
Yeah, I think that's what I love about it is that you're taking you're looking at one activity and bringing in so many different elements and really making it something that a kid can personalize, right? Like, so it's not necessarily like whatever their experience is, they can take in all these possible activities to do with it, but they can also just kind of go off on their own with the ideas that you have in the book. Yeah. What about when it gets super hot? And what are your thoughts? I was serious when I said that today. I'm always shocked. They'll have these like code red, code orange, whatever the day is, and like suddenly the kids at preschool are out at 8 a.m. and that's it, and then they have to be inside the rest of the day. And what are your thoughts about that? Like how when it does get to just be with all this erratic weather, what are we to do?
It's hard, and obviously, you also have to be prepared. If you're going to be out in really a lot of heat, you want to be prepared with sunscreen and with water. Certainly the biggest solution to being outside in the heat is to be around water. So, that really does sort of help make it all more appealing. So, if you're in an area where you can go someplace where you can explore some more. You can do some things with lakes and ponds or make paper boats and float them. The water certainly does help counteract the heat. But also we have some activities in here for stargazing, so you can be spending some time outside, when the sun goes down and it's not so hot. We have a fun activity that actually we propose for winter, but it would be sort of a fun summer activity too. It's making an ice sun catcher. What you do is you gather some treasures from nature, some leaves or flowers or other things that you find, around your nature area, and then you get a bundt pan and you put water in and you freeze it, and then you end up with this ice ring, which then you can hang outside and it catches the sun and it's really beautiful. So in the winter it would last a long time.
Right.
In the summer it would actually disappear very quickly.
It's a science lesson in the summer, right?
You would still have that, that idea of playing with ice for a little bit and then seeing just how quickly it would melt. So it would be a lot of fun.
I like it. I like that. That's a good one. Involve the water, and look for some evening time activities.
Yeah, the shady woods are they're not going to be as hot as the the blacktop or something. So even if it does feel really hot when you get outside, lots of times if you go into a park area where there's a lot of shade or there's a lot of greenery, it is going to feel cooler.
And to get kind of going back to your kids and to your family a little bit, just before we wrap up, I wanted first to kind of like revisit that concept of sort of resisting the urge we've talked a little bit about resisting the urge to put kids to say just watch TV or whatever, it's too hot out. There's some alternatives for that. But what about the resisting that urge, especially in an environment like the DC area, right, where kids really are heavily scheduled. How do you sort of have those conversations with your kids when maybe they want to be doing what their friends are doing, and how do you really show them the value of being outside, of having this like unscheduled time? How do you communicate that to them?
Well, one of the things that we've done is that instead of having every afternoon scheduled with an activity that gets them sort of away from the house, is that we'll often have just a standing play day where they have a friend who comes over, and then we, with 3 kids and 3 guests, 6 kids, they're never allowed to watch TV on a play day. So they go outside and they use their imaginations, and they've built a fort in the backyard out of old bamboo and other things, and they do these great imagination games. And so I think that having that be sort of part of their routine, that they spend this time outdoors with their friends, it just has been a very natural part of their childhood. It hasn't seemed like it's something we've had to force. My son in particular, like he loves to read, and he often will just be squirreled away with his book, but then he'll just sort of hit this point where he needs to get out. So then he's just opening the door, and he is just coming up with all these scenarios in his head about what he's going to do outdoors, on his grand adventure. So, I mean, I think that's imagination can be your best friend with nature play, and it is just such a great way for kids to develop their imaginations, to get out and get outside, and sort of be forced with that moment of, oh, what now? What am I going to do? What's next? It's not so structured, so they have to come up with ideas of what to do and how to make things fun.
Yeah, and I like the idea of sort of, if you're not saying like no routine, you're just saying it just needs to be built into the routine, right? And there are lots of and it doesn't have to be done in a solitary way. It doesn't have to be done where you're always the one as a parent, it's busy, other things to do. You don't always have to be like the center of the universe for it either, right? Like they can, you can involve the village, as it were. And how about you? You said you went on a trip to Shenandoah. Imagine you could go anywhere, we'll say anywhere in the U.S. on a road trip for the summer. I wanted to know where you would go, because you must have, through the book, there's so many different like environments and places and beautiful things. Where would you go? Where would you go with your family?
Right. Well, I mean, if that's a thought exercise, I'm a little differently. But we actually are.
Or nearby.
We are planning a vacation, a camping vacation this August to the Adirondacks.
Oh.
So we're hoping to go up there and do some camping out and do some kayaking and some hiking. And I haven't spent very much time in that area, so I'm really excited to explore it.
Are you a camping person, or is this something you kind of like have grown up doing, or is this something you're getting comfortable with?
Yeah, well, I love to camp. I love sleeping in the tent. I love being out under the stars. And the kids love it too. But to me, the one essential ingredient is the air mattress. As long as I have that, I can sleep anywhere.
I like that. You like to forget the sleeping bag. That's not the important part. I like it.
I used to be able to sleep, more on the bare ground, but those days are past. So.
Yeah. I think if you're out there, give yourself a little bit of luxury, right?
Right. That's right.
So before we go, do you have any parting words? We're headed into the sort of, the part of the summer now. We're about to officially kick off the actual summer, even though it feels like it here already. Last parting words for parents.
Well, I just hope that parents will enjoy being outside with their kids this summer. And as you say, we get very busy, and that's a wonderful thing to schedule for a weekend, but also think about ways in which you could get your kids outside sort of on their own, with their friends, with their imaginations, with their siblings, with the book if they need some ideas during the week, because it's really a great development tool, and it raises kids who are going to grow up to be stewards of this planet and really care about it. You can't love the planet if you're not outside in nature enjoying it. So at National Geographic Kids, we're just always trying to make it fun for kids to care about their world.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think this is the book is a really amazing way to do that. You know, even for kids who are younger, who aren't able to read independently yet, it's also, you know, a great thing for parents to sort of follow along with them. It really can apply to a very wide array of ages, and we love it and are just grateful to you and to the team for bringing out all these ideas for us to get outside, to learn outside, to learn in a different way, and to sort of unschedule ourselves a little bit so that we can really let some learning and appreciation for the world and the planet around us happen. So thank you, Jennifer Emmett from National Geographic Kids, and it's been a great Zoobean Expert on Air session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It was great to talk with you.
Likewise.